is secretary. So Jess, if you could share the slides real quick. Great. So our only candidate is Lee Sasaki once again. So he did send in a video. Fingers crossed this one works as well. But yeah, we will be doing the same thing. We'll ask him the questions and then post them all on YouTube. So we'll listen to this and then, yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Lee Sasaki and I'm running to be your UFC secretary. I joined UFC about a month before the pandemic to teach Filipino martial arts for Barrio, and all of you took me in with open arms and kept me up to date with rehearsals and events. Now, I want to give back to UFC as your secretary by keeping records of cool ideas during meetings, organizing the logistics for officers and members, and, most importantly, keeping you in the loop about all of our fun events so you can have a good time too. And maybe I can teach you all Filipino martial arts too. So please vote for me, Lee Sasaki, as your UFC secretary. Thanks.
Wow, what a speech. Thank you, Lee, wherever you are. I think he's in class.
So first question coming from Jess. As secretary, there are a lot of very detail-oriented tasks that rely on deadlines, as well as collaboration with other officers to ensure that their events are successful. How do you plan on keeping yourself organized between academics and UFC, and how will you promote accountability for yourself and your fellow board?
Okay, so I think first off, considering I'm a STEM student, I'm a pre-med student, so I'm already have to be very detail oriented in a lot of my schoolwork and everything like that. So I think that can translate well with any other responsibilities and duties I have towards the club and just in general. As far as the accountability goes for myself, I'm very self-disciplined and very driven to make sure I'm hitting every single deadline, be able to complete that. And I'm really excited to work with all the new officers and for the next year. And so I think that it'll be really fun to be able to reach out to everyone to also hold them accountable, but also to make sure we all bond, make sure we have good connections. So that way, if I say, hey, maybe this needs to get done by this date, or can you guys submit this? If we all have a good relationship, and I think that we will, I think that it'll all work well for keeping everyone accountable as well as myself. Sorry, I have to reread the question one more time. See if I missed any parts. Yeah, and I think as far as the balance between academics and UFC, I'm definitely going to make sure I allocate more time in my week for UFC. I plan on making this planning on making the UFC a priority for myself, so that way I can make sure I give back to the club that's given me so much.
Okay, next question comes from general members and alumni. What do you do when you feel overwhelmed with multiple projects/assignments that you have to complete?
As far as feeling overwhelmed with all my homework and assignments and any assignments with school things, it's kind of this idea and principle of how many balls in the air you're juggling. And sometimes if it's a school assignment or things like that, where I know I can ask a professor for maybe an extension of the deadline by a little bit, I can always accommodate with that to make sure I'm also being accountable for the club. I can prioritize whether it might just be a participation grade assignment, or I can ask the professor, hey, can I have an extension? So I can make sure I can prioritize a UFC deadline, for example. That's more important. And I definitely do think that there's different ways to prioritize things in my life so I don't feel as overwhelmed. And if I am feeling very overwhelmed, I can always ask my fellow board members and things like that if I can have any additional support, additional help. I'm sure that we're all a team. I'm hoping to work as a team with everyone. So I'd like to be able to ask them for help, ask them like if they can, hey, can you help me out with this one thing while I'm busy studying for a midterm or final? I'm sure that I'll do the same for them when they're in pinch too. So I hope that the teamwork helps with overcoming those feelings of being overwhelmed.
Okay, and then last question is, this position requires a lot of communication between you and other board members to ensure proper workflow. Can you give us an example of a time you were able to successfully communicate with a team?
As far as successfully communicating with the team, I've had other leadership positions throughout my time from like high school and on, things like that. Obviously, things like group chats and text messages really help foster that communication, but it's not always the best form of communication. There's always been a little bit of miscommunications through text, and I'm hoping that next year when we're all in person, I can meet up with them, or if we're still on Zoom, still Zoom with them to make sure that we can all talk and make sure we're all on the same page so we're not lost in translation through emails, through text, and things like that. And as far as like proper workflow, I think that if as a secretary, I take proper minutes and make sure I write down things of like what people can do for the next meeting and make sure everything's very clear and all the minutes and all the records I take, it can help communicate to them to know what their responsibilities are based on what we've talked about in previous meetings, and based on what other people have allocated for them to do for different duties and things like that.
Was that the last question, Sherry? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Cool. Well, with that, you're all done with the elections process, Lee.